Hey, welcome to the Lyons Share. I'm your host, Mitch Lyons. As always, this episode brought to you by Mitch Lyons Wealth, your best game plan to protect, grow, and win retirement. And today we're going to take a step back in time. We're going to go back to my roots at Michigan State and talk to a fellow Spartan who played basketball down there and is now the color commentator for the MSU basketball team and enjoying a great season with Tom Izzo and the boys. But I'd like to welcome to the show Matt Steigenga. Matt, how are you?
I'm great, Mitch. Hey, thanks for having me on. Glad
Yeah.
to be here.
I appreciate you making. I know you've been battling through the flu season and whatnot, and we're glad to have you back, looking healthy and ready to contribute.
February was a bit of a blur for me. I'm glad I got through it, and yeah, from what I understand, so many people have gone through a spot of the flu, and I had it pretty bad. So I'm glad to be upright and talking
Yeah.
with you.
Well, at first, I think you had some laryngitis to start with, and then the next round was the flu. So glad to have you back at full strength and ready for heading into March Madness. So. Well, let's go way back. I mean, we actually met in high school, played against each other, football and basketball in high school, and I'll go back. The first time I'd ever heard of you was going into our sophomore year, and I was playing varsity basketball as a sophomore with a big fella named Steve Scheffler, and I remember I think it was in Holland or something. We were going to a team camp, and everybody's talking about this kid South Christian had that was going to be coming, Matt Steigenga, and I'm like never heard of him, never seen him. And we show up and we're scrimmaging you, and I remember you coming down on a break or something and just tomahawked one. I was like, okay, well that's Matt Steggy. All right, so we know who we're dealing with. And then you proceeded to kick our butt for the next 3 years, but and won a state title your senior year. But then we both go on to MSU, and you had a nice career there. And so we kind of have a similar path as far as the MSU days. And you played for not Tom Izzo. We're just old enough. You didn't play for him. Tom was a or I mean, Tom was an assistant then, but you played for Judd Heathcote. Can you share maybe your thoughts and memories on Judd? There's a lot there, I know, and we could talk all day on Judd Heathcote stories. But what can you share?
Absolutely, absolutely. What I want to save Judd for a little bit because we could talk about Judd for a long time. Yeah, let's go back to high school because I moved to Grand Rapids in the eighth grade, and South Christian was a little different back then. It was only a 3-year high school, so I was in junior high in the eighth and ninth grade, and that drove me crazy as a 6'7" freshman who had to play junior high school basketball, and I was practicing with the varsity then, and I don't want to use the word dominating, but I knew back then as a ninth grader I could be playing varsity basketball, and
Right.
that was extremely frustrating. So what you saw when you first saw me coming into the 10th grade was probably someone that finally had the bridle taken off and was ready to
A lot
go.
of a lot of pent up
A
energy,
lot
right?
of pent up anger. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, my sophomore year, we first met after that, then on the football field.
Right.
And Steve Scheffler was a tight end, and he was dominant because at 6'9", 6'10", he would run for Forest Hills Northern, where he went to high school. He would run 10 yards down the field, turn around like a basketball play, and they would just loft the ball up to him, and he'd jump up and catch it, and nobody could stop that. So what we did, I played safety on defense, and I pretty much played linebacker that game and would line up basically head to head with him. And I think we tried our best to take that away from you guys. But after that, I stopped playing football.
Probably a good decision.
One of my big regrets. I do. I really regret it. I loved playing. I loved, like you, I'm sure, loved
You guys won
hitting.
a state title that year, right? Your sophomore year?
When I played, we went to the semis
Okay. Yeah, I can
and
remember.
lost. I remember a snow-covered field somewhere on the east side, and
Okay.
the team we played drove 80 yards to score with 2 minutes to go, and then we could not convert to win. But then my junior year, the year I quit, the year I didn't play, we went to the state championship game and
Okay.
lost to DePorres, and they had Detroit DePorres, and they had that great running back who went to Notre Dame. I
Rodney
can't.
Culver
Yes,
died in a plane accident. Yeah.
and he actually,
Plane
yeah,
crash, value jet, right
right,
down in Florida. Yeah.
right,
Yeah. Sad deal.
yeah. And he
Yeah.
dominated that. He dominated that game, but Yeah, but then after football that year, playing you guys in basketball was, I mean, a huge struggle. I mean, Steve went on to be Big Ten Player of the Year in basketball,
Yeah.
1990.
And people thought he was crazy for playing college basketball because everybody thought he should have played football because he had
Right.
offers at Michigan, and he would have been a great probably left tackle, honestly, but worked his butt off, man. The dude, he was a grinder, and a lot of respect for him.
I know, a really nice guy. I mean,
Yep.
people, just don't know that soft side of him. And it's interesting. I mean, you think back to when we were in high school and all the athletes that went played Division I at a high level. You
Yeah.
know, you, Steve at Northern.
Smingy.
We had Jim Wyatt who
Yeah.
played left tackle at
Central
Central,
Michigan.
and if not for bad knee injuries, he would have played in the
Yeah.
NFL.
Joel
Jim,
Smingy. Joel Smingy, a 6'6",
oh my gosh,
200-pound tailback.
at
That later played
Hudsonville, right? An
12 years in
NFL
the
defensive
NFL.
end playing running back, crazy.
Yeah.
James Voskuhl, like Calvin Christian,
Yeah.
who played at Michigan and played in Europe for years and years and years. So
Right.
it was an amazing run for the OK Gold
Yeah, that's right.
way back then.
Way
But
back. So then you go on to Michigan State. I mean, obviously recruited at a high level. You turn down some blue blood programs. You go to Michigan State, playing in the old Jennison Fieldhouse your freshman year. I mean, think back on that. I mean, obviously you had the experience of Jennison, which was the last year that we played there. You played there, and then obviously moved on to Breslin. Had some great memories at Breslin. But going back to my question with Judd and Jennison Fieldhouse, I mean, what was your initial? I'll give you my perception of your initial indoctrination into Big Ten. If I remember this right, was we didn't have a lot of big guys on that team, and they kind of stuck you down on the block a little more than maybe what you probably wanted to be coming in as a wing player. So, uh,
well, in high school, played a lot of post, but I know making the transition, I was going to be more of a perimeter player, and that was sure the expectation. But
yeah,
yeah, we recruited. All right, in my class was Mike Poplawski. He
right,
had a knee injury in high school, so he
right,
couldn't play that year. And quite honestly, all you're looking to do is play. And I had to play a lot of the center at 6'7", and had never lifted a weight in high school.
playing
I'm thrown
playing
into the
against
Big Ten, 1989. You think about how good that year
yeah,
was. I always talk about in the preseason. Let me think. Iowa was predicted to win the Big Ten. Indiana won the Big Ten. Michigan wins the national championship, and Illinois was the best team. So, I'm an 18-year-old playing against, back then, nobody left early, playing against 22-year-old
right,
men.
yeah.
It was indoctrination by fire if there ever was one. I mean, I got beat up. I learned a lot, but I have no regrets. And the great part, as you mentioned, Jennison Fieldhouse, I wasn't supposed to play there my freshman year. Breslin, when they were constructing it, it had an issue with a footing, and the roof collapsed during construction. And this was before I committed. And
Right.
I remember Tom Izzo called me, and he was so worried that it was going to affect my decision on college. And he said, unfortunately, it won't be ready till your sophomore year. I can tell you this, I loved playing in Jennison Fieldhouse. It was great. It was a great
Yeah.
experience, the old barn. I love old buildings like that. Williams Arena up in Minnesota, it's a great venue. And
I loved it. I loved being a fan there that
oh
year.
yeah,
The two games that stick out in my mind from your freshman year was it was a Saturday game against Ohio State, and Jay Burson, I think, was on their team then. And Kirk Mans scored 16 points that game. And I remember thinking, man, that kid has never had double. He had never had double figures in his life, right? I mean, in college. And he scored 16, career high on Saturday. Fast forward, we play Monday night against Purdue. Shuffler's, playing. And Kirk goes off for 40, just could
40.
not miss, and it was the most unbelievable thing. And then from that point forward, he was like, the Robin to Steve Smith's Batman, right? I mean, he just for the next 2 years really just shot out of the shot the lights out, which was fantastic. But I just remember that, and I always use that example with kids, right? It's like, man, be ready for your opportunity, right? And take advantage of it. Because I mean, that was an example where, he got more time maybe and scored 16 and got a little confidence. And next thing you know, he's one of the most prolific shooters in the Big Ten for the next couple of years.
Kirk Mans was never short on confidence ever.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. When you have that opportunity, you do. You have to be ready. I mean,
He might
that's.
not have had Judd's confidence was the problem until
But
then.
for anything to have success, no matter where you are, you have to be ready for that opportunity. You do, and he was.
Yeah. Well, and then you go through and obviously you move on to Breslin the next year, and you guys have a magical year and beat Purdue in the final game to win the Big Ten title that year, the first year in Breslin. I got a piece of the net after you guys were done cutting it down.
Yeah.
I remember throwing up my roommate, and he got us both a piece of the net. So I don't know where it is now. I think my brother has it, but yeah. So you had some great memories and some painful ones at that too. I mean, the Georgia Tech game, I think it was that year, right?
It was that year. Yeah, we were the
Yeah,
number one seed in the tournament.
yeah,
Barely got by Murray State, but then
right.
played Georgia Tech in the Sweet 16. Yeah.
Yeah, and a tough loss as the Spartans have had to endure over the years with the Kansas clock game and then the Georgia Tech game where they're talking about whether he got the shot off, and the whole time I'm saying his foot's on the
It
line, and they
doesn't
come back
matter.
5 minutes
Right.
later and say, "Oh, that shouldn't have even counted for a three," and I'm like, "Oh, it was brutal." So that's a bad beat, but anyway, I mean, you go on, you have a great career at Michigan State, some great memories. You get a second round pick of the Bulls in the 90, what would that be? 92 draft?
92 draft. Yep.
92 draft. You play professionally for what, 7 or 8 years around the U.S. and abroad. Give us, I know you've probably told this story a lot, but I think it's great because I remember in '97 watching you play for the Bulls, right? Tell for folks that don't know. I mean, it's an incredible story. Tell how you got signed to the Bulls and ended up getting a championship ring and in the first of the second three-peat for the Bulls teams.
Yeah, a bit of a long story, so bear with me. But right, they draft me in '92, and I'd been hurt my senior year in college, so they asked me to go overseas for 1 year, get healthy, and then come back. So
Yeah,
they were really looking for me, to come back in '93. And I said I was on board for that program. I went to Spain my first year, and then my agent found an opportunity for me to go to Japan. And I was very unsure about that, but I ended up going to Japan for 3 years. So at the end of that, I was finally like, I really want to come back. I want to give this a shot. I had been playing in the summer league with the Bulls, and they'd been great, but they wanted me to try it as well, come back and
sure.
try to make a team. With a second round pick, there are no guarantees. I mean, I have to essentially make the team.
Right.
So the team I tried to make was the 96, well, it would have been the 96, 97 team. The year before, the Bulls had set the NBA record for most wins in a season, won that first championship of the second three. And I look back at it, maybe not the smartest decision of my life to try to make that team, but I really did I had a great preseason. I got to start a game. I had a guy come up to me before that game and tell me, is a guy I was competing with. And I don't know if he was trying to put pressure on me. I'm sure he was. He said, I've been here for 4 years and I've never started a game. So it was my make or break it moment. Those we talked about with like Kirk Mans having that
Yeah.
opportunity. And it was the eighth game out of 10 that preseason. We got absolutely drilled by the Portland Trailblazers. Got run out of the gym. But only two starters in that game scored in double figures, and it was Michael Jordan and me. And I still have that score sheet. It's framed. My kids see
Right.
it. But nonetheless, they did let me go. 2 weeks later, I went to what is now, the G League.
If I
And
remember right, it kind of came down to you and Judd Bushler. Is that right?
yeah, it was, yeah, not to name names, but sure.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, okay. So, yeah, so that was the second of their three. I was thinking it was the first, but yeah, you're right. So, you would know better
But
than me.
yeah, they when my G League season ended, I called Jerry Krause, who I'd had a good relationship with, and just said, hey, I see that you guys have a game on Monday. Can I come down and get tickets? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. No problem. And then that next morning, and you know how it is at the end of a season, you're relaxed. You really don't want to do anything for a good week or 2 weeks. Your body's tired. And that next morning, I get a phone call, and it was Matt. He goes, "How about instead of coming to the game on Monday, you playing it?" Now, I seriously thought it was one of my buddies calling me, pranking me. And I did. I'm
Yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
go, yeah, sure, Jerry. Yeah, what I'm still half asleep, right? I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then suddenly he goes, great. He goes, all right, well, how fast can you get here? At that moment, I realized it's Jerry Krause and this is real. And I was actually up in Milwaukee, not that far from Chicago. And
Yeah.
I said, I can be there in 45 minutes. There's a long pause. And he said, if you can get here in 45 minutes, you can catch the flight to Detroit and play tomorrow on Sunday. I'm like, so I jump up, I jump in my truck, and what was a 45-minute drive, I probably made it there in about 20. And it was snowing out,
Yeah.
and the roads were terrible. And I was way early, and yeah, I signed the contract that morning, had to go through a physical.
So that would have
That
been
was
like, what is that? Was that May then?
No, it was
Was it June?
early April,
April.
so
Okay.
a
I'm
couple
trying to
weeks
remember
before the end of the
because
season.
because
Yeah,
I remember watching it. I think I must have been in, I don't know if I was in Pittsburgh for mini camps or something. I don't know, but I remember watching you when you
it
came
was
on.
on NBC. It was a
Yeah.
national game of the week in
Yeah. I
Detroit.
remember I remember watching it going, "Oh, this is pretty sweet."
And the Pistons blew us out. Back then they had Grant Hill and Doug Collins was coaching
Yeah.
the Pistons, and I got to play the whole fourth quarter. It was
Yeah.
great, but I had like a pair of like borrowed shoes. It was because I really didn't have anything.
Had a lot of time to pack.
It was a noon game. I was talking with Michael before the game. He's like, "What happened to you?" You know, I just never got re-signed, and he couldn't believe it. And he looked at me and said, "You need to fire your agent." So, guess what I did the next day? I fired my agent.
Should have got Michael's agent, man.
If Michael Jordan's telling you what to do, you do it, right?
Yeah.
So but then, yeah, I was on the roster the rest of the season, and then they had me stay during the playoffs, which was great.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
So you get done with your pro career, and what's the next path? What I mean, did you have a plan for leaving basketball, or what came next?
My plan was always to get involved in real estate, which is what I'm doing now. I had done some things over the summers between, playing minor investing, with money that was made during the season. But I ended up coming back to East Lansing in 2003 and cut my teeth, if you would, selling commercial real estate. And then in 2007, Mike Poplawski, former
Right.
teammate at Michigan State, and I started our own boutique commercial real estate firm. And our niche was buying buildings on the National Historic Register. And we have one in East Lansing. We started then in Grand Rapids in 2009, buying properties in the Hartside District on Pearl on Monroe Center, and is right at the beginning of that resurgence in downtown Grand Rapids. And we looked like, brilliant stars that knew exactly what was going to happen in the market. Honestly, we were pretty lucky. It was because of our niche, because of what we were looking at for downtown properties that proved to be, what made us successful, and very fortunate in that. And since those, we've sold almost everything in downtown Grand Rapids. We're concentrated right now in Cleveland, again in downtown markets. But yeah, things have been good. So it's been a fun ride.
So for the listeners out there, what would you say helped you the most transitioning from basketball? What did you take from basketball that's helped you be successful in commercial real estate?
It's that work ethic, time management. Clearly, I would say that the competitive edge. It's fun to compete in a different field. I like being, when you're a professional athlete, it's so much different than being a college athlete or a high school athlete. Sure, you're part of a team and you are, and you always are. But I think, as you know, when you're a professional athlete, you are, for the most part, flying without a parachute. You are your own entity.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
success is based on how hard you work and the time you put into it. And so that was the greatest lesson. I think that as a college athlete, I took some things for granted. Um, we can always go back and try to learn if I had known this then, how things might be different. Sure, there's always sometimes regrets, but I know what I learned as a professional athlete, the things I try to pass on to other people is, you need to take advantage of what you can do. You're in control. And that's what's helped me in business.
And take the shot, right? When
Yeah,
you get the opportunity, take the shot. So,
absolutely.
well, that's awesome. Well, yeah, all right. So then you're into commercial real estate, and then how does the opportunity to become a voice of Spartan basketball? How does that come along? How do you enter into that?
Um, a little bit of luck, I suppose. It wasn't something that I sought. Mark Hollis was our athletic director. He asked me if I was interested. And this was, gosh, 20 years ago. And I said, sure. I go, it wasn't on my radar. And I was very concerned about, the existing color guy who was the old coach, Gus Ganakis. I said,
Right.
what about Gus? And he said, don't worry about Gus. But I asked about a few other people, and he said, look, you're our first choice. Let us know. And right there, I let him know, like, yeah, I'm interested. Now, it took about 2 years until I think they initiated that plan.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny because Will Tiemann, my partner, my play-by-play partner, does football.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so busy that fall with football. He's busy every fall with football. Literally 2 days before the first exhibition game, they contacted me. Hey, are you still interested? I'm just like, I had just started this business.
Yeah.
Um, I'm like, yeah, sure, I guess. What do I do? I had no idea. I had no experience. So if you want to talk about flying without a parachute, that's pretty much what I've done for 18 years.
Yeah. That's
Um,
amazing. 18 years. Jeez.
I know I knew what not to do, but I honestly, no experience and just I was myself. I just,
Yeah.
like you said, took the shot and
Yeah.
it's been that way ever since.
Well, you've had some amazing teams to watch over that period of time. And so let's fast forward into this year. I mean, I don't think expectations, I mean, across the country weren't that high for this team, and all of a sudden here we are. They're leading the Big Ten. You've amazing year, obviously with Tom getting the all-time Big Ten record wins. They're peaking at the right time, right? I mean, they've had a incredible game or run of 5 games here. And have really positioned themselves nicely. Obviously, go to Iowa here on Thursday, and then end it with Michigan. But I mean, how high is high for this team, Matt? I mean, you're on the inside, you're seeing them up close. I mean, how deep of a run can this team make?
It's interesting because, right, when the season started, expectations were, middle of the pack. After this team went to, before the season started, they went to Spain on a team trip. They did very well there. And I think then people talked about maybe this team might be a little better than we think. And, when the season started, we, lost a close one with Kansas. For me, when we went to Maui and we were beat by Memphis, who was more talented than I thought,
Yeah,
rebounded the next day with a incredible win over North Carolina, who at the time was and still is a very talented team. I mean, it's North Carolina; they'll always be good. But that showed me that this team had a resiliency. It had a fight that it could win with 10 guys and not a superstar. And then we went on that incredible run of not losing in December and January. And you just kind of realize there's something special here. There really is. And the knock was, well, we haven't beaten anybody, right? We
hmm
haven't beaten a top ranked team yet. And you can see it in our KenPom rankings. Well, that's all changed now. So I think Tom Izzo said it really well the other day. We're not there yet. There's still room to grow. There's still room to get better. And now we're talking about a top 8 team in the country. How far can it go? If we win our next 2 games if we can get to Sunday in Indianapolis, I think there's a real outside chance it gets a number one seed in the tournament.
Hmm.
And then you never know.
Right.
Then is San Antonio a reality? Yeah, I think it can be. Even as a two seed, which again, if we continue on this little roll, we can get there.
Yeah.
The seeds really do help. They really make a difference in the tournament. So getting that at least no worse than a two, and knowing where this team is at. I mean, this is when teams, a lot of you can see it. A lot of teams are tired against us. We run 10 guys at people, and it's making a huge difference.
It does, and I love watching that about this team. I mean, they're so unselfish, and on one hand, I'd say, geez, you'd like to have that go-to guy that you can put the ball in the hand when you need that bucket, right? And I think at times, I'd love to see Jaden Akins, and he did this last game, stepped up, made some big shots. You see it, with Holloman at times. You see it with Richardson. So it's not always the same guy game to game, and it makes it hard to prep for it. And
Exactly.
and like you said, they can just keep rolling. It's like hockey; they just come out with their next shift, and away we go. And I love the way they play, and they're just the bigs. There's not one dominant big, but they all just play good ball, right? And they're tough. They rebound, and that's what's fun to watch this team. And you can tell when Tom talks about this team, he loves this team, right?
It's his kind of team. I mean, defensive minded, rebounding, fast breaks. I mean,
Yeah,
we're not leading just the Big Ten, but we're leading the nation, or top five in all those categories. So it really is a Tom Izzo team. It's such a difference from what we've watched over the last maybe 3 to 4 years. The teams before that had a Cassius Winston or some dominant star, and it's really what does set this team apart.
yeah. Well, it'll be a fun ride, and we look forward to listening to you. And hopefully, Will is saying he got it a whole lot down the stretch, and we make some buckets.
I mean, that is where the ceiling is. We haven't shot the ball great all year, and if we start to, that's where the ceiling could be. I talk about Xavier Booker. Really, if he could be a dominant factor off the bench, that could happen. He played great last year
Yeah,
in the Big Ten tournament, so who knows? I mean, there's still guys who can contribute more,
yeah.
and Mitch, I want to thank you for having me on, and you've really impressed me with your knowledge of basketball, and especially your
Well,
history lessons
I
going
watched a
back.
lot of great players growing up, you and Steg or Chef and Vasco. So it wasn't because of my great ability, but I certainly banged heads with a few of you along the way. But yeah, hey, we appreciate you coming on the show. Hey, as always, folks, like, subscribe, get access to all the great guests we're having on the Lions Share. And again, this episode brought to you by Mitch Lyons Wealth. Check us out at mitchlyonswealth.com. And Matt, again, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
No problem. Love that. Thanks, Mitch.